welcome to Premier Talk. I am Protima Chatterjee, and today we are delighted to bring you to the Playground Theatre, a multidisciplinary performing arts incubator and a 100-seat venue in West London, offering a unique development space for artists and the arts community to explore new ideas. True to its name and mission, the Playground Theatre has play and experimentation at its heart. From theatre and Shakespeare to music and comedy, audiences are invited to the playground to share in the joy of artistic play. It opened its doors to its audiences from 17th May. The venue has been at the forefront of pushing forward with socially distanced live theatre during the pandemic and has already welcomed audiences back twice between the lockdowns as government regulations have allowed. Through lockdown, they have remained deeply engaged with their community. Today, we speak to their co-artistic director, Anthony Biggs, to share all that has kept the Playground Theatre busy through the past year and their upcoming highlights. Hi, Anthony. It's really lovely to be able to speak to you today. We've just been through the most challenging year, and here we are today. You are welcoming your audiences back in. You've just had one on the 17th. So how does it all feel?
Well, it's wonderful to be back. We had a very challenging year last year, as everybody did. But actually, we managed to open a couple of times last year, and then we had to close again. And this time, hopefully, this will be us reopening for good. And we had a wonderful first night back on the 17th of the month. We had our festival called Rebel Fest, which is an annual festival. We have it every year, but this is slightly different because normally it involves a large-scale community festival that happens over a few days. This time it's slightly slimmed back, but we had a really, really wonderful evening, and we had a number of musicians, the Trojans, Jazz DeLorean. We had a one-man War and Peace, and we had the wonderful comedy act Siblings as well. And in fact, I also got a chance to do a little performance as well. So. It was great fun. Wow,
that's fantastic. So, as you said, last year, through the lockdown, you were open twice with, of course, government protocols in place. So how was that? Was it any similar or different to this time opening up?
Well, the guidelines they are pretty similar. I think we've had to interpret them a little bit. We always err on the side of caution, so we make sure everybody's temperature checked when they come in. We have social distancing for the seats. We're lucky, as you can see in our theatre, we can just take seats out and we can create a sort of cabaret feel. So there'll be the sort of tables out for people to sit next to. So it has this kind of Ronnie Scott's vibe, which works very well. I think what we have learnt from the previous lockdowns is that we don't want to commit too heavily to shows immediately after we come out of this situation, because it's so tricky to reschedule. I certainly don't want artists to lose money or for us to incur too many costs. So we're just starting back gently. We've had this Rebel Fest. We've got a few one-nighters and one-off events coming up. And then we have a drama school coming in for a while to do some of their shows. So hopefully that'll allow us to sort of ease back into things ahead of a full autumn season.
Fantastic. And through lockdown, you have been heavily engaged with the community at W10. So if you just tell us, what were your programs and activities during that time? What were the strategies that you took, in order to keep the communities going? So if you just give us a little bit of detail.
Yeah, sure. Well, we have been active with our community right from when we first opened 3 years ago. Just down the road from us is Grenfell Tower, and that tragic fire was just before we opened. So in fact, the first activity we did was to have community activity in the building, working with a charity called Grief Encounter for the families and those directly affected by the fire. And onward since then, we've really been completely sewn into our local area and our neighbourhood. We work particularly with St Charles Hospital, which is a mental health unit up the road. And we have a programme with them called Well Read, which is a play reading programme and a play writing programme called Well Written. And that we were able to shift onto Zoom. It's been a challenge, but it has worked very well. In fact, there have been benefits to it because we've had people join from our community element of that, joining from all over the world. We've had people calling in from Australia and America to join those reading groups. We also carry on working with other partners like Chicken Shed, who we've worked with over the years. They've also been in. And we are actually, it's been an opportunity to link up with the community in a different way. We've had a very successful food program, which our cafe ran last summer. I think we did something like 7,000 meals for local food banks and for those in need.
Wow.
Cooked on the tiniest cooker you've ever seen. I think we gave it a name, actually. I can't remember what it was. And it was great. We had the mayor come down to sort of take a picture and stand next to the cooker. And luckily, well, that's now completed. But I mean, this pandemic has shown that we're certainly not all in it together when it comes to these awful situations. And certainly a lot of our local community have really suffered, and we're trying to support them.
Wow. So if you could just run us through some of the programs that are coming up, what our audience is expecting from the Playhouse.
Well, as I said, for the first few performances, we're doing quite small projects. Just coming up, we've got a one-man show. It's called Shylock by Gareth Armstrong. It's based on Shakespeare, it's using Shakespeare's words. Award-winning show by Gareth Armstrong. That's coming up very soon. We've got the comedian Jenny Eclair coming to try out work. As I said, a lot of what we do is try out. We see everything from the very beginning of the creative process. So it could be just somebody just trying out new material or a reading, right through to a full production. And that we examine all of that. And that could be for artists, or it could be for the community. So the community would be involved, even if they could be just coming to see something and perhaps giving their feedback, and that might change the future of something. Or it could be that they're actually coming in to make their own work. So an example of that, we've got a reading coming up of a new play called Einstein and Me by James McManus, and that's with Michelle Collins and Philip Franks, which is a play, and it'll be the first public reading of that. But we treat it like a performance, so it's going to be a script-in-hand performance, but the script is still in development. Yeah. Then we've got a drama studio called Drama Studio London that are coming in. They're doing a show every week with different shows, so it's a really good opportunity for audiences to see the next generation of talent that's coming out of drama school. And then in the autumn, we have a wonderful show about the dancer Ida Rubinstein. Which is a great unexplored story, really, being created in-house and starring one of our team, Naomi Sorkin, who's an American ballet company star. And so she's coming in to play Ida. We're working with the Shakespeare in Italy company. The director, Bill Alexander's coming in to do Merchant of Venice with can I tell you this? The female Shylock. It's going to be quite interesting. And we work with a company called Represent, and they work with actors from lower socioeconomic groups. So it's an opportunity to give people who wouldn't otherwise get a chance to be performing in a venue like us an opportunity.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant lineup, crossing between art forms,
Yeah.
various sections of the community,
Yeah.
different artists at different levels of their career. So
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, it's wonderful.
Well, as you say, cross-fertilisation between art forms is a big part of what we do. Because in a way, when you put different art forms together, that's when you make something new. And what we're always trying to do is to disrupt patterns. I mean, that's what Rebel Fest was.
Interesting.
That is what Rebel Fest is. It's a festival of dissent. It's about stirring things up and then seeing what comes. And the piece that I'm working on at the moment, the dance piece I mentioned, is Ada. It's a version of adaptation of a Nabokov novel. And that's me working with dancers and a choreographer, Maxine Braham, to bring a novel to life. So I'm a theatre director working with dancers to create a sort of hybrid, really. It'll be something that's not theatre, not dance, somewhere in the middle. And I'm also working with an experimental sound designer on it as well. So I have no idea what it'll be, but that's part of the fun.
I'm sure it's going to be really exciting. I mean, just the sound of it. I mean, I just want to watch it now.
Oh, good. Well, everything we do, we try to make joyful. You know, we never know. You're never quite sure whether things are going to work. That's part of the fun of it.
Now, all of this that you've just told us, quite a few activities, and you've just briefly mentioned about how financially you've been supported, you've been lucky enough. So how do you think the revenue model has been affected by the pandemic? Because earlier on it would be membership fees from donors, through gate sales, and also part of it from government funding. Now, has this entire model seen a change due to the pandemic?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, that is that three-strand approach is the way it's always worked. I think it's going to be harder to receive money from the Government and Arts Council because I'm sure they're going to be very squeezed. I know they are. So getting money for project money is going to be very competitive at the moment. So I think as that gets squeezed, people will be looking at other ways to raise money. We don't know yet whether audiences are going to flock back and what they're going to come to see. So relying on revenue is also going to be a bit of a challenge and a bit of a risk. And of course, other people have suffered during the lockdown. So private donations are also going to be a bit of a challenge. We are lucky in that we have a number of bodies that already support us, and our outreach work is covered for the next 3 years. Through wonderful charities like the K&C Foundation. We get money through the council. Kensington and Chelsea support us for some of our activity. The Theatres Trust have given us money. And we have a number of other bodies. Our outreach work is very well supported. I think the production support is going to be the one that's going to require a lot of help and a lot of assistance. I've just realised there are 2 other projects that I should mention which are and the reason I didn't add them into our production list is because they're things that are taking place outside our building. But we've got 2 activities coming up. One, we're doing a co-production with Riverside Studios, and we're taking a sculpture exhibition which has an audio show that goes on around it called Damage Control, and that's going into Riverside Studios in the summer. And that is the story of from the Great Fire to Grenfell is our sort of tagline for that, and it's about the language of emergency. And then we're doing a very large-scale project with Nick Kent, who is a verbatim theatre maker, who used to run the Tricycle, now the Kiln, and that's around Grenfell, which is going to coincide with the second part of the inquiry. And we are doing all the outreach work around that with a number of local schools. So. Yeah.
And now we've learned how to move things from live to Zoom or on an online platform.
Yeah.
So at least, fingers crossed, not that we want to get there again, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that every company has had to adapt. And I think almost every show I think that comes in here now will have a virtual world as well as a real world presence.
If you were to look back, could you share with us one difficult decision that you had to take in a very quick time, like very quickly to come up with something?
Well, I mean, probably the most crushing thing was to close a show as the first pandemic hit. And we had a production of Mum, which was a play by a local writer. And sadly, we had to close that as it was in pre-production. It was in rehearsal. It was coming into just doing its tech. We ended up doing one performance, a sort of dress rehearsal performance, and then had to close. And sadly, I couldn't even be here because I had COVID at the time. So I didn't get to see the show. So it was a really, really difficult time for us.
Moving forward, if I were to ask you that what was that one learning you think you had personally from what we've gone through over the lockdown, through the pandemic, everything, the madness that was going on, what would you say?
One thing that I would learn from that, don't program too far ahead. No, I think when we opened again, we were all very hopeful after the summer that we would just sort of come back to life again. And we opened, and then, we were all so excited about what was going to happen, and then we had to close again, and then we opened, and then we, and then we had to close again, and then I think what we learned was that really we had to be a bit more cautious.
Fingers crossed. And before we go, any message for your audience? What are they expecting from you in the coming months? I know you've told us a whole lineup, but if in one sentence you were to say to your audience to welcome them back, what would you say?
Well, I would say that the playground is a place for artists to come and play. And when I say artists, I mean us all. We all have an artistic bone in our body. It's all something that we need to be able to express and practice. It's crucial. It's who we are as human beings. So I want to encourage, I would say to my audience, come back, experience live theatre again, and take part in what we do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for talking to us today. It's been a great pleasure. And the fact that we are sitting in this live space with lights on, that is what makes it more magical. Thanks very much, Anthony.
Thank you very much.